Hello students, I was discussing about this particular silencing information regulator and regarding the telomeric DNA. So this silencing information regulator is going to play an important role in the telomeric DNA and stabilization as well as inactivation of the telomeric DNA. So here what the silencing information regulator SIR is going to do is it has three proteins SIR2, SIR3, SIR4. So these proteins are going to play important role in the SIR plays important role in the inactivation of that particular DNA during transcription. So how this particular SIR is going to play important role, we'll see. So what exactly is going to happen is the people have studied the structures of yeast telomeric DNA. So wherein people have seen that there is going to be a sequence of nucleotides which are going to be repeated several times. And for example, the sequence is that there'll be C2 cytosine followed by 3 adenine followed by Ca, which is repeated 1 to 5 times. So this sequence is called as C13A sequence, and it is going to act as in binding site for an important protein called as RAP1. So this RAP1 protein is found to be playing an important role in the inactivation of the DNA at the near the telomeric region. So what this RAP is going to do is it binds specifically with the DNA molecule, and this RAP in turn it's going to recruit SIR3 and SIR4 protein. So this SIR3 SIR4 protein together they are going to recruit another protein called SIR2. The binding of this SIR2, what it will do is it makes that particular DNA to get inverted or get folded. So this particular folding is going to make the SIR2 to interact with the SIR2 of another trimers and makes these interactions very much firm. So thereby the telomeric DNA is going to fold like this several times, and thereby that particular part of that DNA is going to become inactivated and will become non-available for the process of transcription, and also protects the ends of the DNA or chromosomes. Now histone methylation, as we already discussed, plays very important role in the process of as an epigenetic code in the process of activation or inactivation of the DNA into euchromatin and heterochromatin structures. So these methylations have been studied very well by using genome-wide chip analysis. So people found that the modification of lysine 4, that is K4 on H3, is found to be a very important marker for the transcriptional initiation, where when this lysine, that is K4 at H3, when it is going to be trimethylated, so it is found to be an indication of initiation of transcription or activation on the active gene. And if you go through the summary, histone modifications can affect gene activity either by altering the histone tails, which can actually interact with the neighboring it can further affect the neighboring nucleosomes and thereby altering the nucleosomal crosswalk linking, and as well it can attract other protein the chromosome modification enzymes, so the remodelers can come and bind and cause a remodulation. So these modifications can go in combinations: acetylation, phosphorylation, ubiquitinations. So because these we have seen the one of the modification influences the other modifications, and thereby they always go in a combinations. So these are the summary of all the modifications which we have all through now discussed about, and these modifications are very important for the binding as well as altering the histones nature, thereby nucleosomal interactions with the DNA, and thereby it facilitates the transcription or even represses the transcription. There is one more protein people have identified called as facilitates chromatin transcription. The simply in short called as FACT. So FACT is found to be composed of two subunits, SPT16 and SSRP1. SPT16 binds to H2A H2A dimer, H2A H2B dimer, and has acid rich C terminal, which is essential for nucleotome remodeling because histones are positively charged and this is negatively charged. And the SSRP1 binds with the H3H4 tetramers. So FACT is found to be regulating the transcription or facilitates the transcription through nucleosomal by promoting the loss of H2A H2B dimer, and also interacts with the histone chaperonins, promoting the addition of H2A H2B dimer to a nucleosome that has lost the dimer. So that is the variant binding or the normal H2A H2B binding in the remodulation process. SPT16 subunit of the FACT, because of its acid rich nature, can interact with the nucleosomal histones, as well as it can also help facilitates the remodelers to interactions also. Next we come across the last one more kind of protein called as PRAP1. So these PRAP1s, they are found to be isolated and studied in case of heat shock Drosophila polytene chromosome puffs. So one of the agents required for this particular nucleosome loss in case of polytene chromosome is poly-ADP ribose polymerase. So in response to the heat shock in this particular case, people found that this particular enzyme is going to be involved in removing the itself from its histone like binding to CRO nucleosomes. Thereby it helps in destabilization of the nucleosomes and also removal of the nucleosomes. It also has this poly-ADP ribose, which is going to act as a polyion and polyanion and could bind directly with the histones, and thereby it can also destabilizes the histones. So you can see how exactly a poly-ADP ribose binds with the protein, and this interaction can cause destabilization of the histones. So till now I have discussed with all these different kind of modifying and modifications and modifying enzymes, as well as nucleosome structure, how it get modified, how it is going to repress the transcription, how it is going to modification of it allows the transcription, all these aspects. So now we will study about the mapping and quantification of transcript. Mapping and quantification of transcripts is one of the important requirement in the study of transcription. So here there are several kind of tools and methods people have employed in order to understand the process of transcription, as well as in order to measure the rate of transcription. So which was again an indication of how exactly the proteins are going to be functioning together and as well independently in the process of initiating and elongating, as well as in the termination of transcription. And like repressors, activators, transcription factors, polymerase, all those roles can be studied very well by using these particular different methods. So transcription, sorry for the disturbance guys. So here the transcription, even sometimes people have identified that transcription is not going to get terminated uniformly and resulting in the continuum of the species smeared on the gels. So therefore people have used all these different methods in study. So first method is northern blotting. So most of you have very well studied this process. So it is a blotting technique wherein the RNA is going to be detected. So what we do in this particular process, we take the mRNA, we are going to use the cDNA probes. mRNAs are going to get separated by the gel electrophoresis, and followed by that they are going to be blotted onto the nitrocellulose membrane. Then they are going to be fixed, and then it is going to be allowed to interact with the probe, and the probe is going to be the cDNA against a particular gene or the mRNA. So based on that we can able to identify the transcription. So here why this particular assay is going to be done? So in order to know which particular different types of tissue genes are going to be expressed in different tissues, so we can find all these what are all the same RNAs which are being synthesized in almost all the tissues and different types of cells, and the RNAs which are different found in the different cells. Okay, so all these things can be identified by using northern blotting, and it also tells about abundance of the transcript and also helps in the quantifying of the transcript. So in case if we are using the radio labeling, then we can go for density in case of autoradiography, or we can go for fluorescence probe if we are using, then fluorescence labeling, then we can go for amount of fluorescence, which can all be used for quantification of amount of RNA which is being given by a particular set of genes. Then another kind of method is S1 mapping, one of the important mapping which people use it in identification of 3' and 5' end of a RNA, and also to quantify the amount of given RNA in a cell at a given particular time. So in this particular method, the major principle used is that the S1 nuclease, and very important nuclease, will always involve in the cleavage of single stranded DNA or single stranded RNA, or like that, but it will not be able to cleave double stranded DNA or double stranded RNA, or even the hybrid of DNA and RNA. So people have used this particular nature of the S1 nuclease and used it in identification of the 3' and 5'. So what is the principle is that, so a single strand DNA probe is going to be there, which will be labeled, and it will be allowed to hybridize only with the transcript of the interest, means the probe will be developed in such particular way. So how exactly the process is done, you can see here. This is a DNA having a 350 nucleotide having recombinant DNA molecule, double stranded DNA having two restriction sites, BAM-H1 and even SAL1. So there are two BAM-H1 sites and there is one SAL1, and whatever the arrow mark is indicating the initiation of transcription, so we don't consider, we know that. Okay, so because it was the position is going to be determined only after the mapping with the S1. So what people have done is they used BAM-H1 and cleaved out the edges of that particular DNA, and then allowed it to get labeled by using labeled P32 ATP. So how it is done? By using alkaline phosphatase, removed the terminal 5' phosphate and then added up the phosphate of the labeled ATP by using polynucleotide kinase. Then after labeling the DNA, it was then further subjected for cleavage with the SAL1. So there was formation of a small fragment and a larger fragment. The larger fragment was considered to be the used for the probe, as a probe. So what they did is they denatured the DNA molecule, and this denatured DNA gave rise to the probe carrying the transcription initiation sites. That's the idea. Then they allowed the transcriptions to be happening, or isolated the mRNAs from the transcribed gene. So they have isolated the mRNA. All the mRNAs were allowed to get hybridized with the probe, and then S1 nuclease was added. So now when the probe is going to be added, so only from that particular part of the DNA where it's not that the complete RNA is going to get hybridized, only that particular part of the RNA is going to get hybridized with the probe which is having complementarity, means the length, whereas the other portion of the RNA as well as the DNA will not be getting hybridized, especially the mRNA which is having um, means mRNA can hybridized with the probe only till the transcription initiation site, whereas the other portion of other extended portion of the probe will not get hybridized with the RNA. So therefore when S1 is added, so then what it will do is it is going to hydrolyze all the single stranded DNA as well as single stranded RNA and creates a DNA RNA hybrid, which further we can able to subject it for suppression by using electrophoresis, and then we can able to identify the first few initial nucleotides are the first nucleotides which are actually going to be present as in transcription start site. Okay, so that is the advantage of this S1 mapping. So we can able to identify the transcription start site. So it can be done at both 3' and 5' end. So you can see here it is 3' end, how it can be identified the transcription start site on both the strands. We can able to do that, and then we can identify the transcription start site 3' end and as well as 5' end, which will be very important in understanding the process of transcription. So use of S1 mapping, as I told you, it can help in mapping 3', 5' end. Assuming that the probe is in excess, the intensity of the band in the autoradiogram is proportional to the amount of transcripts present. So densitometric studies can be very helpful in quantification. As well, we can also identify the ends as well as quantify it. Next, there is another kind of method which is very similar to S1 nuclease mapping or S1 mapping, that is RNase mapping. So RNase mapping, S1 mapping is almost goes same in the same as it is, because RNase is also going to work on the similar fashion. They cleave out the RNA, so the other extended portion. So with the S1 mapping, whatever results we get, similar kind of results are going to be obtained with the RNase mapping. Similar methods are employed here. 5' 3' end and concentration can be understandable or can be measured. The another method is primer extension method. It is another very important method used in the transcriptional studies. So why? Because in the S1 there is a redundancy which we are going to come across with, because the S1 when it is cleaving the single strand DNA molecule, sometimes one or two nucleotides from the double strand structures can also get cleaved out from that particular strand which is actually having that single strand overhangings. So therefore in order to understand exact point of cleavage or exact point of the start site or the termination, people have used this particular primer extension method. In this particular primer extension method, what people do is they take the DNA carrying the gene of interest with the start site, they allow the transcription to happen, they get the transcript, and then after the obtaining the transcript, it will be allowed to hybridize within primer having a labeled having a label, that is a labeled oligonucleotide having 18 mer is going to be allowed to hybridize, and then it will be extended by using reverse transcriptase. So by using that method we are going to extend it and get more number of products which can be separated by using electrophoresis, and the sequence can be studied. So this particular process will give us an understanding of the exact transcriptional initiation the first nucleotide, means even single nucleotide accuracy can be obtained with this, and exact 5' end can be identified. So the other method which people use it is runoff transcription, and very good method in quantifications of transcription. So what this method is going to be involved is they take that particular nucleotide A double-stranded DNA molecule having two restriction enzymes, they cut it exactly and get the particular size of DNA, and having a transcriptional means having a promoter region, then they allow it to undergo transcription in vitro by providing all the polymerases, NTPs and magnesium and other requirements. Every requirement is going to be fulfilled. So what happens in this particular process is that since the restriction sites cleaves in between the DNA molecule, so there is a chance that the RNA transcription may not complete here. So as the termination sites and all will not be available, so what happens in this particular process is that RNA polymerase is allowed to do the transcription without any stopping of transcription, so that RNA transcription is going, the RNA polymerase is going to do the transcription even till the last nucleotide present in the template strand, and then after that it just falls off. So that is called as a run off. So this is called run off transcription or run off assay also people call this as, because RNA polymerase is going to be run off, run down, and it's going to get off from the template because of non availability of the template. So with this particular method, the benefit is that we can able to measure the length of runoff transcript and compared to the location of restriction sites at the 3' truncated DNA, and this gives an idea about the transcription and the rate of transcription and the efficiency of transcriptions also. Next, another type of method people have used is G-less cassette assay. So in this G-less cassette assay, what they have done is, next to that particular transcriptional initiation region, that promoter region, they have added a synthetic double-stranded DNA carrying all the nucleotides except GTP. So means a G-less nucleotide sequence was added of about that 355 base pairs, followed by that the normal DNA sequence will be there at the, this is all in the anti-coding strand, so that when the transcription is going to be taking place, so during this particular this is in the template strand. So when the transcription is going to be taking place, they have added all the nucleotides except GTP for the transcription, so that since the G-less cassette is there, so gene, that is guanine nucleotide, is not required for the transcription to take place, so it will continue. But this continuation is going to happen only till a particular sequence where the guanine nucleotide is going to be required for the transcription. So when G is required, so transcription is going to get aborted. So again there will be an initiation of transcription and it will going to get aborted till the G. So whatever the transcript which is going to be obtained, that transcript can be separated by gel electrophoresis. So what we can find is, so we can find exactly for till that particular means the cassette is going to be exactly get transcribed, okay, and whenever the first G comes, it will going to get aborted. So with this we can able to measure the transcriptional activity and rate of transcription, what is the efficiency of RNA, means how much of transcription can RNA is going to be able to do. So all these aspects can be done by this G-less cassette assay. So runoff transcription is a means of checking efficiency and accuracy of the in vitro transcription. G-less cassette assay is mainly used to study about the promoter efficiency, because more promoters are efficient, more number of abortive transcripts are going to be obtained, and RNA polymerase has capacity of doing the transcription. Next, measuring the transcription rates in vivo. So whatever we have I have explained till now, most of these methods are in vitro methods. The transcription, everything is going to be conducted in vitro. So then how to measure the in vivo transcription? So for this, people have done one specific type of developed a specific type of method, because here transcription is going to be synthesized, and there may be a chance that transcripts can get degraded. So in order to understand it, people have gone for nuclear run-on transcription. So run-off we have studied, now run-on transcription. In run-on transcription, what they have done, what is a role here is, run-on means here to continue the process of elongation. Run on, keep the RNA polymerase to run. So what they have done, they have isolated the DNA, sorry, not DNA exactly, they took a cell which is already having a transcriptional process undergoing. I isolated the nucleus. So since the nucleus is going to get isolated, the process of transcription might not have completed, and it might have got stalled due to the non-availability of the nucleotides. So this nucleus which is isolated from the cell will be provided with all the required NTPs and other cofactors, everything, so that the transcription which was happening can continue, and it can give rise to a product. So but here whatever the nucleotides which is provided for the process of transcription, out of which one of the nucleotide is going to be labeled, like for example it can be GTP, which is going to be labeled, so that now whatever the RNA which comes out will have the labeled nucleotides in it, and we can able to identify the RNA, and the number of the RNAs can be quantified. So what people have done is, they isolated, means all the RNAs which were getting produced out of this process, the labeled RNAs, and these labeled RNAs were subjected for studying. So what was the gene which is being transcribed? In order to understand that, they took fragments of DNA, the genes, and it was blotted onto the nitrocellulose membrane, and then to these blotted DNA hybridized, it was hybridized with the extracted labeled RNA, which are the product of run-on assay. So run-on transcription. Now these particular RNAs will go and hybridize with those particular DNA fragments having sequence complementarity. So that means the last part includes a dot blot assay, so where a dot of DNA fragments will be there, and to that labeled RNA is going to be allowed to hybridize, and then it will be scanned and looked for the radioactivity or the fluorescence, which will give us an idea what was that particular DNA fragment or the gene fragment or the gene which was undergoing the transcription. So this is the run-on transcription. So this run-on transcription is going to be very helpful in understanding the rate of transcription and comparing the in vitro and in vivo transcriptional rate and efficiency of polymerases, all these things. Now into the reporter gene transcription. So people have done this reporter gene transcription, so mainly in order to understand the specificity of the promoter and how much of the product is going to get accumulated and what is the efficiency of the promoter. Okay, so for that people have done this reporter gene transcription where they have used Laxed gene and cat gene and luciferase gene. So all these were used to check for the transcriptional efficiency as well as how much of the products are going to be present, so which can be measured based on the blue white screening, can be done based on the intensity of color, intensity of means amount of chloramphenicol acetyltransferase activity, or even terms of chemiluminescence, intensity of the light. So we can study that. And people also gone for measuring the accumulation of proteins in vivo. So where people have used different labeling methods in order to understand and measure the proteins get produced in understanding the rate of transcription, where people have used immunoblotting methods, Western blotting, immunoprecipitation methods. All these methods were employed in order to understand the and quantify the amount of protein which is going to get produced. So accumulation, because people have make sure that product of that particular gene is going to get accumulated, and this accumulation can give us an idea about how much of transcription has taken place around and the gene how much is efficient is a promoter, and the gene how many times it has got transcribed. So those particular details can be obtained by using is measuring the accumulation, so which is done by immunoblotting, which we all know. Western blotting also we know. In case of immunoprecipitation, people have mainly used the antibody that binds specifically with the protein of interest. Followed by that, they have added secondary antibody with the protein A on a resin B using the low speed centrifuge. You can separate them and study. And the last method is immunoprecipitation method, which further, if you remember, I have explained it when we studying the remodeling proteins. So immunoprecipitation method, that is chromatin immunoprecipitation method, CHIP as it's called, is a method used to discover whether a given protein is bound to a given gene, forming a chromatin DNA protein complex. So here what people have done is they've used antibody to precipitate a particular protein in complex with the DNA, and they used PCR to determine whether the protein is bound near a particular gene or not. So you can see there is a isolated DNA molecule having bound protein, and to identify whether which particular protein is bound, you can have a antibody which can attach and cause precipitation, and this antibody can be labeled with the protein A attached to a bead. When you are going for centrifugation, whole of these particular things are going to get get pelleted, whereas all the other DNA fragments which are not having protein bound, means specific protein bound, they are going to get into the supernatant, which can be separated out, and these pelleted complexes can be further, in order to understand which particular fragment of DNA actually is bound with the protein and which gene or something like that, we can use a primer for a specific DNA, and we can make it to get hybridized with that particular precipitation, and then try to extend with the PCR. So with this particular thing, what we can understand is that if the extension happens, amplification takes place, and which will tell about what is that particular sequence of DNA and what was the gene fragment or the gene, so to which these particular proteins are bound. Okay, so and where exactly it is binding, is it binding in within the gene or adjacent to the gene? Okay, is it at 3' end of the gene or is it at the 5' end of the gene? So this kind of some of the details can be obtained out through this particular chip assay, and it is found to be the most important assay method, which has given a lot of insights into the process of chromosomal remodulation, repression, activation, and role of proteins in those particular process, how they bind with the DNA, and what kind of alterations, changes they bring about while binding to the DNA. So all these factors people have studied by using this particular method. So with all these things I can say, so chromosomal organization itself is going to be a first line of regulation of gene in case of eukaryotes, so which can specifically regulate which particular genes are going to get activated, which particular genes are going to get repressed. So later other transcriptional factors, other kind of repressors, they'll all come into role and they involve in the regulation of gene expression. So that's all. Thank you. So with this I can say I have come to the conclusion of we have completed with molecular biology, and further hopefully I'll finish my other portions of the syllabus. Thank you.